Hello everyone, this is Miss Melanie Maramag. The assigned topic to me is on critical discourse analysis. Of course, we're looking into the definition of critical discourse analysis. So CDA is a type of discourse analytical research that primarily studies the way social power abuse, dominance, and inequality are enacted, reproduced, and resisted by text and talk in the social and political context. Of course, in any case of language is a communicative event, and we say when we use the language, of course, when we choose our words, we create or we express a particular attitude, and hence language creates social relationships. Of course, we cannot be able to create a harmonious relationship without communication. And here in CDA, language is associated with power. Okay, that is to say that CDA now is a type of discourse analytical research that deals with how power is exercised through the use of language. Okay, crucial for critical discourse analysts is the explicit awareness of their role in the society. We now move on to the conceptual and theoretical frameworks of CDA. So as I have said earlier, the main goal of critical discourse analysis is to look into how power is being exercised through the use of language. So we first proceed to the gap between the macro and the micro levels of social order. Okay, language use, discourse, verbal interaction, and communication belong to the micro level of social order. Power, dominance, and inequality between social groups are typically terms that belong to a macro level of analysis. This means that CDA has to theoretically bridge the well-known gap between micro and macro approaches, which is, of course, a distinction that is a sociological construct in its own right. So CDA here looks into the relationship between the micro level of social order and the macro level of analysis. Now, there are several ways to analyze and bridge these levels, and thus to arrive at a unified critical analysis, we have four: members, groups, actions, process, context, social structure, personal and social cognition. First, on members groups. Language users engage in discourse as members of social groups, organizations, or institutions. And conversely, groups thus may act by their members. For example, I belong to the Department of Education because I am a public school teacher, and the way we converse, the way we use our language would now determine how teachers use the language. It's also different when a particular police officer also uses the language. That would also represent how the police officers in PNP use their language. So the language that a particular group uses now is is determined by the members of that particular group. So that's one way also of analyzing and bridging these levels that we are talking about here. Number two is actions process. Social acts of individual actors are thus constituent parts of group actions, and social processes such as legislation, newsmaking, or the reproduction of racism. So a particular process now depends on the individual actions of individual actors. Okay. Number three is social context, social structure. Situations of discursive interaction are similarly part or constitutive of social structure. For example, a press conference may be a typical practice of organizations and media institutions that is local and more global contexts are closely related and both exercise constraints on discourse. What we mean here is that in a particular community, there is this distinction on why is this such a thing happens in that particular community. For example, in this slide, a press conference may be a typical practice of organizations. For example, in the context of the newly elected president BBM, ba, he would always conduct press conference because that is in line with what is with his context. That is his situation. So it's just but typical. But for us teachers, we don't it's not typical for us to conduct press conferences. Okay? So that's it. Context and social structure. So a particular phenomenon in a particular community is normal or is typical depending on the context. Okay. Number 4, personal and social cognition. Language users as social actors have both personal and social cognition. That would mean their personal memories, knowledge, and opinions, as well as those shared with members of the group or culture as a whole. So both types of cognition influence interaction, individual members, whereas shared social representation govern that particular group. Okay? We will be understanding more about this as we go on with the slides. Next, as I have said earlier, that CDA or critical discourse analysis here is associated with power. Okay, it says here that power becomes a control. Okay, in what way? Groups have more or less power if they are able to more or less control the acts and minds of members of other groups. This ability presupposes a power base of privileged access to scarce social resources such as force, money, status, fame, knowledge, information, culture, or indeed various forms of public discourse and communication of the vast literature on power. That's according to Luke's 1986 and Wrong 1979. So according to them, no, the more power you have, the more you are able to control the acts and minds of a particular group or of a member. The lesser power you have, the lesser you could be able to control the minds or acts of other people. Meaning to say, okay, meaning to say, the lesser, therefore, that you are able to control other people, I'm sorry, the lesser power you have. For example, okay, in a particular classroom setup, I'm actually here in my classroom. It's our lunch break. So I am doing this video lecture here. So inside the classroom situation, who has the power? But of course, the teacher has the power to control the students. If I say to my students that, okay, please stand for a prayer, please lead this prayer, it would direct a particular student to lead the prayer in the classroom. So in this context now, I have the power because basically I am their teacher. Okay, so that's one way of establishing power or control inside the classroom. It depends also not only on the words that you say, but who says it. Okay, what is the position? What is the status of of the one that is talking or the one that is commanding? Another example for fame, of course, the celebrities, all the vloggers, yung mga famous personalities that we see on social media, they tend to have power to influence yung mga fans nila, right? Just like during the political campaigns, you know, a lot of celebrities really involved themselves because they believe that they have the power to influence other people. And of course, if when we say a force, a police officer has the power to enforce rules and regulations, right? because they have the force, they have the power, they have the status of being a police officer. So therefore people are directed to respect or abide by the rules and regulations perhaps of a particular in a particular context. And those with money, those people with money, we mean the wealthy people here, are of course um, have they have the capacity to control other people's acts. For example, they would hire you to wash their clothes for them. They would hire you to clean the car for them. That could be a form of control or a form of power. Why? Because they have the access to the scarce social resources such as money, the status, fame, knowledge, information. A professor, okay, a professor that would require us to record a video lecture on the topics assigned to us. That is also an example of power as control. And those groups who control most influential discourse also have more chances to control the minds and actions of others. Speaking of persuasion and manipulation, okay? Diba? People who tend to be very eloquent, eloquent people, persuasive people, they tend to control the discourse, right? Um, for example, asking what someone to buy a product. Yeah, you must be very eloquent if you're a sales lady or a salesman. In that way, you control the mind of the consumer or the customer to buy your product. That could also be one, right? That's also persuasion and manipulation. And parents persuading the child or encouraging the child to take another course instead of taking the course that she thought about. That could also be an example of persuasion and manipulation. When we say manipulation here, it does not mean that it is explicitly expressed. I don't know if it's also true to you, but I experience it that sometimes you don't like to buy the thing, but because your friends are buying it, and they didn't actually tell you to buy it also. But then, because of how they use their language, you are being manipulated, and therefore you change your mind and go with the flow, with the trend, right? So that could be persuasion and manipulation. It's not explicitly saying, oh, you have to buy this, you have to buy this. No. But you're being manipulated. Why? Because you are being persuaded by other people. And this persuasion and manipulation, of course, would come into two forms. A positive experience about persuasion and manipulation. For example, when you are so down and you just have a mental breakdown or emotional breakdown, the one that is encouraging you to get back up, to be okay, to be strong, that could also be a form of manipulation and persuasion in a positive way. However, the blackmailing, diba? That term, blackmailing, that could also be an example of persuasion and manipulation in a negative manner. But regardless of their use or their function, that could still be I mean, considered persuasion and manipulation. And so there are two basic questions for CDE research. That is the answer to the question, how do more powerful groups control public discourse? Okay? And how does such discourse control mind and action of less powerful groups? And what are the social consequences of such control, such as social inequality? Okay, first, we proceed to control of public discourse. We have seen that among many other resources that define the power base of a group or institution, access to or control over public discourse and communication is an important symbolic resource, as is the case of knowledge and information. It's important to control public discourse, of course, because it has a lot of implications. And what are these implications? Now, first is that in most situations, ordinary people are more or less passive targets of text or talk. For example, of their bosses or teachers, or of the authorities such as police officers, judges, welfare bureaucrats, or tax inspectors, who may simply tell them what not to believe or what to do. I believe this happens to many of us. Or the question is, have you ever experienced also being a target of control? Yes, especially that if you are not the boss, diba? Ako, I have experienced it. One time when I was asking for the permission of my school principal to excuse me from coming to school because I have a personal agendum to do. I have a personal thing to do. But then she did not permit me to get absent. Why? Because I have a lot of paperwork to finish. And so I disregarded my personal agenda, and I had to do as what she told me to do. So that is just example of, yeah, being one of the ordinary people. Okay, next. Oh, where did I go? Okay. Also, crucial in the enactment or exercise of group power is control not only over content, but over the structures of text and talk. Relating text and context, thus, we already saw that members of powerful groups may decide on the possible discourse genres or speech acts of an occasion. Diba? Those people who have power over us would tend to control the topic, would tend to control which topic or which genre or speech acts are being talked about in a communicative process. Okay, next, for example, a teacher or judge may require a direct answer from a student or suspect, respectively, and not a personal story or an argument. That could be an example of that. Okay, so having no choice, you have to say, you have to directly answer the question. More critically, we may examine how powerful speakers may abuse their power in such situations. This now where CDA comes in, no? How powerful speakers tend to abuse their power in such situations. For example, when police officers use force to get a confession from a suspect, or when male editors exclude women from writing economic news, right? So power, of course, definitely can be abused by the one who is more powerful. Okay. Also vital for all discourse and communication is who controls the topic. And topic change as when editors decide what news topics will be covered. Professors decide what topics will be dealt with in class, or men control topics and topic change in conversations with women. These are the instances now where power is being exercised in the use of the language, right? Um, later in the succeeding in the next slides, we will be discussing how or what influences the establishment of or the exercise of a particular power aside from their status. Okay, although most discourse control is contextual or global, even local details of meaning, form, or style may be controlled. Okay, as I have said earlier, most discourse control is contextual, depending on the context, such as, for example, the boss to the teacher to the student, okay, the police officer to a constituent. In many situations, volume may be controlled and speakers ordered to keep their voice down or to keep quiet. Women may be silenced in many ways. That's according to Houston and Krameray 1991. And in some cultures, one needs to mumble as a form of respect. Okay? Yeah, in many situations, volume may also be controlled and speakers. For example, I have observed this in my class just this morning. Just this morning, I was discussing about claim and counterclaims, formulating evaluative statements in my reading and writing skills class. And then I have observed that when a student recites, the volume of the voice of the student is a bit, syempre mas soft yung boses nila kesa sa teacher. And one reason could be because of the authority or the power or the kind of control the teacher has inside the classroom. That could be also one. So, applying it now to the teaching context, it is therefore important for us teachers that whenever we ask a question, our voice, our volume, our modulation should not be that intimidating to the students. If you wanted to establish their self-confidence, now, I have observed this. Now, we have to talk in a manner that the children or the students would feel that they belong inside the class. That the power does not only reside in the hands of the teacher. Okay? Because with teachers, we tend to be really controlling. We tend to be dominant. We tend to be superior inside the classroom. And sometimes the students would feel that in their inferiority because of the power the teacher has. The public use of specific words may be banned as subversive in a dictatorship, and discursive challenges to culturally dominant groups by their multicultural opponents may be ridiculed in the media as politically correct. So, yeah. And finally, action and interaction dimensions of discourse may be controlled by prescribing specific speech acts and by selectively distributing or interrupting turns. Within a CDA framework, aside from power as control, we'll now also look into how minds are being controlled, how mind is being controlled uh, in analyzing critical discourse. Okay, mind control involves even more than just acquiring beliefs about world through discourse and communication. The question I actually been asking this question to my friends and the people that I met, yung mga ano lang, mga char-char lang na kwentuhan. Then I would ask them, how often do you believe what other people tell you? That's my question to them. How often do you believe or do you agree with the opinion of other people about you? Do you let their opinion sink in your mind when they say that you have very bad attitude, something like that, or you will never achieve something because you are this, you are this, you are this. We look into how powerful people control the minds of other people. So the answer to that question, if I were to be asked how often I would believe the opinions or yes, the opinions of other people about me, depending on my schema. I mean, depending on the experiences that I have, depending on the person who is talking, right? Because we tend to believe people who are experts, of course. Experts. Oh. Pag sinabi ng panelists that you have to improve your thesis or your research paper on this, of course, you have no other choice but to believe it because they are experts. Ano din sabi ng police na walang mag-iingay. Ang video okay hanggang alas 10 lang, hanggang alas 9 lang. You don't have the power to violate that because you are not the police officer, right? So we tend to believe, ako personally, I tend to believe people depending on their expertise. Kung may napatunayan na ba sila, yes. But that does not mean that I belittle the people who have no degree or whatsoever, who have no money or whatsoever. I mean is doon sa validity or sa reliability ng information that I get from these people. Of course, we must be very selective. We must be very critical in choosing which opinion, which information are we going to inhale or we are going to get from this people. First, recipients tend to accept beliefs, knowledge, and opinions unless they are inconsistent with their personal beliefs and experiences. That's also actually one of the answers of my friends that, well, uh, I tend to believe opinions that are of similar opinion that I have. Yun ang ano nila. So meaning, in that case, meaning you are not easily persuaded by what other people. Parang ang sinasabi mo dun is they have to have a similar opinion with me so that I would believe them, so that I would support them. But of course, there are also other people who would tend to be the devil's advocate. The devil's advocate. You mean the one who is always on the other side of the coin, the one who would always negate your idea, the one who would always differ from you. Okay, through discourse from what they see as authoritative, trustworthy, or credible sources, such as scholars, experts, professionals, or reliable. Second, in some situations, participants are obliged to be recipients of discourse. Example, in education, in many job situations. Yes, being a student, of course, you don't have any other choice, but you are a participant. We are obliged to be a participant of a particular discourse. We don't have choice to not listen. Hindi pwede yung gano'n. Ay, hindi ko trip makinig dito. Hindi pwede. Because um, power is already established in that particular context. Third, in many situations, there are no public discourses or media that may provide information from which alternative beliefs may be derived. Yeah. One of the reasons why we also tend to believe what other people tell us is because we don't have idea about the topic. We don't have schema. We don't have prior knowledge about the topic. So, ganun pala yun. So, ang nangyayari noon, ito yung ginagawa ng mga manipulative people. Now, they take advantage when you don't know anything about the topic. They would insert ideas na talagang parang kapani-paniwala. But then when you research about it, hindi pala totoo. Something like that. No? Yung gaya ng mga mambubudol. Yeah, when they try to sell a particular product and then they take advantage of your innocence and your ignorance. And then ikaw naman na si Mr. and Miss Ignoramos, you tend to believe it and then you bought it out na wala sa plano. Kaya nabudol ka. Yeah. That could be also one of types of mind control. Fourth, and closely related to the previous points, recipients may not have the knowledge and beliefs needed to challenge the discourse or information they are exposed to. Yeah. So as I have said earlier, there's no particular information that they got or they don't have prior knowledge about it. Wala silang idea about it. Walang magko-confirm, mag-affirm. So they tend not to negate the information at hand, or they tend not to contest the idea being said to them because in the first place they don't have information about it. So these are the reasons why our minds are being controlled, no? Either because expert yung tao or wala ka lang talagang masabi. Okay. Given a specific context, certain meanings and forms of discourse have more influence on people's minds than others, as the very notion of persuasion and a tradition of 2,000 years of rhetoric may show. That's what I am saying. Now, we tend to believe also people who are very good speakers, di ba? We get hooked with people who are eloquent. Yung wow, papawaw ka na lang, di ba? Ako, not to sound very flattering, but I really enjoy this class, discourse analysis, and it makes me look forward to see Dr. Temporal every Saturday because parang ako, controlled na yung mind ko. Parang ganun. Parang controlled na yung mind ko. And I willingly surrender my mind to the expertise of Dr. Conchita Temporal. Why? Because I look up to her. And when she explains a particular concept, I really learn a lot. So parang ganun. For me, it's not just because the person is expert, because there are also expert people who are boring. I mean, Yeah. They conduct the class. They're also doctors. They are, yes, experts sa field nila. But then when they explain a particular kaso, parang walang dating ba? Parang it's not really appealing. So, yeah, it could also be, one factor is the very notion of persuasion, of how information or the delivery, the delivery of the particular information. It also matters a lot. Okay? Thus, a typical feature of manipulation is to communicate beliefs implicitly, that is, without actually asserting them, and they with less chance that they will be challenged. This is one of my greatest goal as a language teacher. No? To be able to manipulate. Not in the sense that to manipulate the minds of my students, not in that way, but to be yung effortless. Kasi there are people, just like Dr. Temporang sabi ko, parang kahit hindi sila mag-effort, andun na eh, parang it's natural for them to speak that way. And that's one of my dreams, to be able to communicate my beliefs, my knowledge, my opinions about certain topic without actually putting so much effort. Parang effortless ba? Parang natural na lang sa akin yung ganun. And there are people really that just like Dr. Temper who are like that, no? Yung parang kahit ano sabihin, papawaw ka na, wow ka na lang. And then parang nahi-hypnotize ka na lang. Parang ganyan. And that their ideas will not be challenged because na-intimidate na yung nagkinig sa niya. Ito ang intimidation na term ko dito, it's not in a negative way, but intimidation in a more positive way. Parang talaga na-starstruck ka. That's it. Okay. So, all in all, Fairclough and Wodak, I don't know if it's Fairclough or Fairclough, and Wodak 1997 summarize the main tenets of CDA as follows. As I have said earlier, that power uses language. Okay, power uses language, and CDA looks into how power is exercised using language and what are the consequences of exercising this power in public discourse. So, in short, CDA addresses social problems because you try to look into the gap. Okay, what makes the conflict a conflict. It also relates to relations are, power relations are discursive. Okay, how social relationships are established through discourse. Number 3, discourse constitutes society and culture. Discourse does ideological work. Discourse is historical. The link between text and society is mediated. Discourse analysis is interpretative and explanatory. And discourse is a form of social action. Yeah. And I'd like to end my presentation with one of the most striking line that I got from the readings that were assigned to me on critical discourse analysis, and it says here that power is seldom absolute. I had a mini survey about this one. I was asking my colleagues in our department if they agree when I say that power is seldom absolute, or power is not actually, it's not even absolute. And then, maraming nagsasabi. I also actually made a little parang experiment na rin if they would agree, if I would be able to control their mind or their belief about power is seldom absolute. If I try to become more persuasive, or if I try to create examples that would catch their attention. And firstly, their belief is that power is absolute. Parang sa kanila, sabi na, well, no, power is absolute. Then I contested their idea. I said, power is not absolute. It's actually seldom absolute. Why? Because power is based on context. Yeah. Power is based on context. So, meaning, what may be powerful in this school, the person who is powerful in this school may not be as powerful as he or she is in other schools. Like for example, say the school principal. Of course, the school principal has the highest authority inside this school. But when the school principal goes out from this school and goes to the school's division office of Cagayan and would meet a lot of supervisors, would meet a lot of superintendents in a particular meeting, her power now is never, it's not absolute already. Yung power na hindi na absolute because she has to be under a more powerful personality. Okay? Another example, why do I say that power is seldom absolute? Let's say, for example, the highest position in this land is the President of the Republic of the Philippines. And yes, he has the power. But when he goes out from our country and goes to another country, it's not that he loses his power because the power is of course still there, but that his power is not anymore applicable to his context. Kasi kung pumunta siya ng Switzerland, yung Prime Minister ng Switzerland, yun ang mas powerful kesa sa kanya. Prime Minister ba sa Switzerland? I'm so sure. Yeah. Something like that. So, power is seldom absolute because it's based on the context. It's based on the if during those times, yung mga datu, ganyan, are powerful, in our time now, they are not as powerful as they were. Because power is based on context. Therefore, in critical discourse analysis, okay, it's important for us to be reminded that we may be powerful, we may have control over other people, but it's never absolute. It does not stay forever. Meaning to say, we must therefore exercise the power that we have in a manner that we influence these people in a good way. Okay? Yeah, we influence these people na parang you gain respect not because you are powerful, but you have exercised that particular power in a manner, in a humane manner, 'di ba? Yung humanely, parang makatao siya yung paggamit mo ng power. Because there are instances that even if you are a powerful persona, but people lose their respect of you because you are not using your power uh, ng mas maayos, ng mas makatao in a respectful manner. So, yes, power is seldom absolute. Okay. So, thank you very much for listening. That would be all on critical discourse analysis. Thank you very much.